Hey, more rides, new life, new gigs, new this, new that. My home, my place, bigger names, bigger.
All right, so I missed last week. I had to move. It's a real pain in the ass. If you've ever moved before, it's a real struggle. Me and my wife, we moved ourselves, and we saved money from having to hire some movers to help us. But anyway, it was a real pain in the ass. I was worn out. But anyway, I'm back. I got a new studio set up, so I had to spend some time doing that. Now, looking at this podcast right now, you might not be able to tell because at least from this front angle right here, you can see the Dallas Mavericks, the championship picture frame that I've always had since the beginning. Right there. So it probably looks like nothing's going on, but I got a whole acoustic setup. So I had to do a little bit, try to get the sound quality going and everything like that. So anyway, getting into this NBA trade deadline stuff, that's the biggest topic in the NBA as far as recent news. I've got 4 winners in the NBA trade deadlines. Now, outside of the Eastern, not outside the Eastern Conference, besides the Toronto Raptors acquiring Serge Ibaka from the Orlando Magic, the Eastern Conference didn't really do much as far as anything that's worthy or noteworthy as far as anything that's impacting the Eastern Conference as a whole. Now, Serge Ibaka does help the Toronto Raptors, but I'm not going to fall into that trap of the Toronto Raptors and believe in them. I'll believe it when I see it because I was all in on them last year. Not necessarily beating the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals, but at least making it competitive. And at the end, they just didn't really show that they were competitive enough to face the Cavs. So we'll see what happens with that. But as far as the winners I've got 4 winners in this NBA trade deadline. Obviously, the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go off the rails and like everyone else is saying that, oh, they're one of the top 5 teams in the West now. They've still got a lot of work to do. Their wing players are god-awful. They have no bench players whatsoever. They've got DeMarcus Cousins, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday. They just signed Jarrett Jack to, I believe, a 10-day contract. Now, forgotten in that DeMarcus Cousins deal, that trade with the Sacramento Kings, and I'm going to get on them in just a little bit, was Omri Caspi. Now, Omri Caspi was very important in that deal because, like I said, they have no wing players if you're New Orleans Pelicans. Omri Caspi would have been a great addition, but unfortunately, his first game with the Pelicans, I believe against the Houston Rockets, he broke his hand, and the Pelicans waived him immediately. So anyway, they got Jarrett Jack, so hopefully that can help it out a little bit. But if you're the New Orleans Pelicans, you needed to take some kind of risk to get yourself, and it's to get free agents to take you seriously, because the New Orleans Pelicans, let's just call it like it is. The New Orleans Pelicans has been a disaster of a franchise. No free agents were taking them seriously. Yes, they've had Anthony Davis, but they weren't going to make anything. They weren't going to grow or do anything. They were just going to get a bunch of high draft picks and things like that. But they took a risk to at least give themselves a chance to build something noteworthy in the future. And I think it's a risk because DeMarcus Cousins, he's an unrestricted free agent in 2018, but it's a risk that you had to take. You gave up a first and second rounder and Buddy Hield, Tyreke Evans, and I believe Langston Galloway to the Sacramento Kings. They absolutely robbed the Sacramento Kings. And I'll talk about them in just a little bit, but it was a risk that they had to take. So I believe if they get something going as far as wing players and a bench, I think they can do something really nice. But it's just refreshing to see a team take a chance, a noteworthy chance. Now, it's a risk, but at least a chance, because DeMarcus Cousins, he was talking about that he wanted to re-sign with the Sacramento Kings. Obviously, it had a lot to do with that $209 million extension that he would have got if the Sacramento Kings never traded him. But the fact that the Sacramento Kings just completely whiffed and they just changed course, they look like complete fools. I'm not calling them fools, but they really, really looked like fools, because up until this point, even up until the last second, it looked like, at least publicly in the public eye with the media, Vlade Divac and everybody with the Kings were saying, we're not trading DeMarcus Cousins. All last year and the year before that, we're not trading DeMarcus Cousins. He's our guy. And then all of a sudden you switch tunes and you're talking about, oh, the culture changed and everything like that. And there were reports also saying that, well, they were a little bit hesitant on signing DeMarcus Cousins to that $200 million contract. I don't understand. DeMarcus Cousins is who he is. And I'm not this guy that's a DeMarcus Cousins apologist. I live in the Bay Area. I live in Northern California. Me and my wife, we love watching DeMarcus Cousins play. We watch a ton of Kings games, and we were actually planning to go to the Golden Center Arena, I believe it's called now, and just to watch DeMarcus Cousins. Well, the hell with that now. He's not there, so we're not going to go. But the fact of the matter is that the Kings, they talking about, okay, if you want to trade him, fine. But the fact that you switch tunes, you really let your fan base down. The trust is probably gone with a large portion of your fan base. But then not only that, The Sacramento Kings, Rudy Gay went on the record and said this is basketball hell. Sacramento is. No free agents are ever going to take you seriously. You were going to get high draft picks for the foreseeable future anyway. At this point, it's about selling tickets and giving your fans something to look forward to, and that was DeMarcus Cousins. So, and if you wanted to trade him, okay, fine. But the fact that to do it so abruptly, and then for Vlade Divac to say, well, we had a better deal a couple of days ago after they traded DeMarcus Cousins, that's ridiculous. And I don't care if DeMarcus Cousins' agents got in the way of that, saying, oh, he's not going to re-sign wherever he gets traded. I don't care. You are the front office. You're supposed to handle that. And up until this point, up until the last second, you're like, we're not trading DeMarcus Cousins. And then you did it. You got absolutely robbed by the New Orleans Pelicans. But anyway, the other winners I got in the NBA trade deadline, the Lakers. They got a first-round pick from the Houston Rockets, who's also another winner in the NBA trade deadline. They got a first-round pick for trading Lou Williams to the Houston Rockets. And also Magic Johnson, not so much the NBA trade deadline, but the fact that they got Magic Johnson, and who knows what he's going to do. It's just a wait-and-see mode. But they needed a change in that front office. Jim Buss just wasn't getting it done. And Magic Johnson became the GM, a week ago? And about 3 hours after that, after it was announced, he got a first-round draft pick from the Houston Rockets. I think that's good stuff. He has a plan. Obviously, he's trying to tank and protect the picks that he has for the first-rounder. So let's see what they do. The Houston Rockets from top to bottom, they may be one of the deepest teams as far as top to bottom, as far as in the rosters in the league, because now you got Lou Williams, and to add to Eric Gordon with the bench already, that it's just ridiculous. From top to bottom, they have one of the deepest teams in the league. They are just one extra, not necessarily a superstar, because you got James Harden, who I think has been the best player this year. I think Isaiah Thomas has been the MVP because of what he's had to work with and the surrounding cast that he's had compared to James Harden. But I'm going to sit here and say that the Houston Rockets, they're at least a star. I'm not going to say a superstar away, but they're a star. There's just a star away from really contending with the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs. I think next year they may be able to do it. Lou Williams is going to be free agent in 2018. So at least you got him for the rest of this year and all of next year before, he becomes a free agent. And lastly, my Dallas Mavericks. I'm very pleased with what they did. They traded for Nerlens Noel. They gave up Andrew Bogut, and they gave up Justin Anderson, and they traded a protected first-round pick, 1 through 18. I looked at the standings right now. Right now, statistically, it looks like the 8th worst team in the NBA. They are not going to fall out the top 18 as far as worst records in the league, or draft pick, whatever it is you want to call it. They're not going to do that. But I like what they're doing. Yogi Ferrell, Seth Curry, Harrison Barnes, Nerlens Noel, Wes Matthews. I mean, streaky is the best that I can say about Wes Matthews this year. But Yogi Ferrell, Seth Curry, Harrison Barnes, and now Nerlens Noel. Now he's going to be a restricted free agent this coming off season. So obviously, if you give up a protected first round, now if obviously they're not going to get that first round pick, but in return they're going to get 2 second-round picks. You give up that much, that means obviously you believe in Nerlens Noel. You're probably going to re-sign him again. I actually like that. It's young. It's something to look forward to now, because at the beginning of this year, I'm just like, I'm not watching any of these games. This is just going to be terrible. And now we've got something to look forward to for the foreseeable future. We're not going to contend. We're not going to do anything for the next couple of years, but at least they have a good foundation moving forward. I mentioned the Kings as far as being big-time losers in the NBA trade deadline. The other losers that I've got, the other loser that I've got in the NBA trade deadline is the Boston Celtics. I'm just trying to understand, if you're the Boston Celtics, what is the end game for Danny Ainge and the Boston Celtics with the gift of the basketball gods that they got from the Brooklyn Nets? They got 4 first-round picks. They got 2014, 2016. They can swap 2017. Obviously, they're going to do it. The Brooklyn Nets have a great chance of ending up being the number 1 draft pick, having the number 1 draft pick this upcoming NBA draft in 2018. Now, anybody else, I would imagine that anyone else would sit there and say, okay, I've got 4 first-round picks. I can use this to get a superstar or something like that to build a foundation to challenge the Cavaliers. You've got Isaiah Thomas, who's having an MVP-like season, and the NBA trade deadline came and gone, and this seems like to be a recurring role where the Boston Celtics stood pat. They did absolutely nothing. There were rumors about Paul George. Now, I get Paul George as far as the Boston Celtics not giving up those draft picks because he's going to be a free agent in 2018, but I thought they should have made a run at DeMarcus Cousins. Now, reports were saying that Brad Stevens didn't want to deal with him. Okay, fine. But you could have went after Jimmy Butler to pair with Isaiah Thomas. To at least, because let's put it this way. Everybody's sitting here, and all the Celtics fans that may be out there saying, oh, we're second in the East, who cares? Well, let me tell you something. You can be second in the East all you want. In a playoff series, you don't stand a chance in hell against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not at all. You might win a game, but more than likely get swept because Isaiah Thomas is going to get canceled out by Kyrie Irving. LeBron James, he's going to do his thing. You got Kyle Korver. You got a bunch of pieces there. Channing Frye, a bunch of pieces there. Isaiah Thomas is the best offensive player there. Al Horford should not be your second best player offensively. I mentioned that in my podcast where I'm talking about Isaiah Thomas should be the MVP so far. But the fact that you stood pat and you didn't do anything for any of those picks. 2014, you drafted Marcus Smart with that Brooklyn Nets pick. 2016, you got Jaylen Brown. Okay, two scrappy dudes, two defenders, two really just high-energy guys. They do a lot of things, defensively. Offensively, they're okay. They're not necessarily that great, but that's okay. They're good defensively. Okay, fantastic. Now you're getting to a point where, okay, whether you draft, Lonzo Ball or Markelle Fultz, I believe his name is in the NBA draft, even if you get the number one pick in the draft, if you don't make a trade at the NBA draft, you don't make a trade then, and you take one of these high draft picks, okay, that's fine, but it's going to take a couple of years for them to develop. Look at Brandon Ingram, right? Before he got drafted, there was comparisons to him to Kevin Durant. I was one of those people that said that. But he's not having the greatest rookie years, but I still believe in him. And a lot of people still believe in him, that he's going to still flourish. Kobe Bryant, he didn't necessarily have a great rookie year, and then he took off from there. So let's see what Brandon Ingram does. But at the same time, using that time to wait to develop these dudes, if that's what you're going to do, if you're not going to trade the draft pick this year, and you're going to take a high draft pick, the years it's going to take to develop those draft picks, you're wasting Isaiah Thomas's prime. So I don't understand what it is you're doing. And then after that, you've got one more chance, just one more pick with the 2018 first round pick. What are you going to do then? Are you trying to build for the foreseeable future forever, and despite Isaiah Thomas doing well, or are you trying to contend with the Cleveland Cavaliers? Because based on what I'm seeing with the Celtics and Danny Ainge, they've done over this past trade deadline in the last couple of seasons, they are not going to contend with the Cavs whatsoever, and they're going to waste an MVP caliber season from Isaiah Thomas. So let's see what they do. As far as this, I'm going to see what they do come draft night in this offseason, but they had a chance to get Jimmy Butler. I think they should have got DeMarcus Cousins, but if you don't want to deal with his antics, okay, that's fine. But you could have got Jimmy Butler, somebody to at least make it interesting, to at least maybe add one more player this offseason, and then you're real legit contenders to possibly win the East next year. But you're delaying yourselves further. I don't know what's going on with the Celtics. So the Kings and the Celtics are my losers. The Mavs, the Pelicans, the Lakers, and the Houstons are my winners this NBA trade deadline. So coming up next, I'm going to sound off. I'm going to do a Vikings segment. Again, I thought I was going to have to do this for a little bit until the Vikings made a decision about Adrian Peterson. Matthew Collar of 1500 ESPN recently had a conversation with Rick Spielman, GM of the Minnesota Vikings, in which he alluded that Rick Spielman may be leaning towards bringing back left tackle Matt Khalil to the Minnesota Vikings again coming up next year. Mediocre at Best podcast with Realistic Randy. This is a Blue Vision Entertainment production. You can subscribe on YouTube or iTunes. Send us a tweet at realistic_Randy. Coming up, we're going to talk Minnesota Vikings.
Can change my lane, my way, my name is Trey. I made